What is going on? This is Michael Hacker with the Hacker Outdoors podcast. On today's episode, the gang is joined by my good friend and all-around outdoorsman, Christopher Barbieri. Chris is here to speak with us about switching from skiing to snowboarding, his recent trips up north to New Hampshire to snowboard, and what it takes to get into rock climbing. We really enjoyed speaking with Chris, and if you like what you hear, please give us a thumbs up and a review. Without further ado,
come on. There we go. And we are on. Guys, thank you for joining us today. I have Brian, Joe, and our next guest, Chris Barbieri, on today. We're going to talk a little bit about snowboarding and rock climbing here in New Jersey and in the Northeast. Welcome, guys. How's everyone doing today?
Doing well.
Yeah, Brian?
Yeah, another day in paradise.
Different location today for you. I'm loving that tie-dye surfboard behind you.
Yeah, that's one of the good ones. Another one shaped by me.
Another one shaped by you. Well, Chris, thanks for joining, man. We've been talking about getting you on for a few weeks here. Chris and I have known each other for quite a good amount of time, I'd say. We work together and then have been doing some outdoor activities together for, the better part of a decade now. So invited Chris on today to talk a little bit about his most recent trips up north, snowboarding here on the East Coast, and then we're going to jump right into some rock climbing questions and learning a little bit about that today. So Chris, first of all, tell us a little bit about you, kind of your outdoor pursuits, and really what drove you to get into snowboarding, because I know you used to be a two-planker. We won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I started skiing in middle school in Cedar Grove. We used to have a guy in town who would run like a town-wide trip where like all the kids would like get together on Sundays and meet at like town hall. And we'd take a bus trip to Mountain Creek every Sunday where they'd just drop us off in the morning and then leave us until the mountain closed at night. So it was a good opportunity as kids to just go out and do whatever you wanted to do. Just did that until like probably way after high school, where I guess eventually we just stopped skiing altogether because now that we finally had to pay for stuff on our own, it was too expensive and didn't have a job at that time that would really support that. And then I guess in the last year or two, I went skiing with my girlfriend who is a snowboarder. And yeah, I felt like I was on my old skis and I felt like the skis were really fast compared to the board. And I said, I should just learn how to snowboard. And there was a night where somebody else we had on the mountain had similar size feet to me and could ski. And we just switched that night and then started learning.
I remember you telling me about that, and we were joking a few times when we were in the office together, and you'd said, "Oh, you bored? I used to ski." And you always said, let's kind of get together and make it happen. But, you kind of made it happen outside. And that was awesome to hear that you made the switch. I know I see Brian smirking over there. We always joke about two plankers and the difference between skiing and snowboarding and the people that do that, right? So you recently took a trip. So you were telling us before we hit record here that you got a Northeast Pass. What is that, and what mountains are that good at, or is that good at?
Yeah, so we were looking before the season started, because as a kid, I always had like a Mountain Creek season pass. And then ever since then, we were always just like buying tickets, going somewhere, going with whatever REI discounted mountains were there, like Blue or whatever discount trips we could get. But I knew that this year, with all of the reservation systems coming up, that was probably like a pipe dream to have discounted tickets and stuff this year. So I mean, some people had bought Epic passes like way last year, or like the previous years where Vail had taken over some of the mountains around here. But before the season started in the fall, we'd pick up, it's called the Epic Northeast Value Pass. So it's mainly for Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then there's some a little bit further north and some in Ohio that we're not really concerned about. But the local stuff around here is we have Jack Frost Big Boulder, we have Hunter Mountain, and then in Vermont there's Okemo and Mount Snow and Stowe. And then there were 4 in New Hampshire, which is where we went to: Wildcat, Attitash, Sunapee, and Crotchet Mountain.
That's actually a lot on there. Do you mind asking ballpark? What did that cost for the year?
It was 600 for the
That's-
pass.
Let me put this in perspective. We have by me in PA. We have two small. We got Ski Round Top and Ski Liberty, and Ski Whitetail is in Maryland,
Oh,
and there are three joined.
That's on it.
So
by the
the
way.
Whitetail Liberty Round Top Pass is like $1,000.
Is it really?
It's I'll look it up now. I mean, when I had the shop, I mean, we're talking back in the early 2000s, the pass was still like $400 or $500. So that's a hell of a deal.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
been great. I mean, I doubt we're going to make it to all. We're trying to go to most of the places. I doubt we're going to get everywhere, but it's, now that we've gone at least 6 or 7 times, and we went up to Stowe in the preseason when there was like nothing there, but it's served its value already. So everything now is just
No, definitely, because lift tickets are like probably like $70 a day. I mean, I know out west some places are pushing 100 a day.
Well, we
Yeah,
were
well,
talking about
yeah.
that before you joined, Joe. Like, I think Mountain Creek is like $80 something before taxes for a day pass, and it doesn't matter a weekday or a weekend. That's, I mean, put into perspective for a moment. Last year, I think I bought preseason. So over the summer, I bought my season pass, full season, and I want to say it was like $290. I might be wrong on that, but
Yeah, I
somewhere
think-
around that.
So when I lived in Colorado, they had a thing for people to do. I think it was called like the Buddy Pass or something along those lines. And basically, I think it was Keystone, A Basin, Breck, I think Vale and Beaver Creek. And now this was back in like 2003 or 2. That pass was I think like $399. But there was there was blackout days, but it was the holidays and you wouldn't want to be out there anyway because it's how packed it is. But even still now, they still have that deal out there. It's a little bit more, but it's still hardly a great deal.
Wow.
I just checked Big Sky. If you wanted to get a pass for this coming weekend, it's $194
wow.
Yeah,
A day or for the full weekend?
per day.
Wow, man. Jeez.
yeah.
I
They
remember
want
this-
people like I know people who go out there on vacation. They'll buy passes. You can buy different passes that go extend days that are cheaper than workout being cheaper than what you pay a day. But you got to get up to Chemo because Chemo is a really fun place too.
Level
I want
chemo.
to throw that in there. Yeah.
So what were your thoughts on the mountains, Chris?
So when we went up to New Hampshire recently, well, we went to Stowe in the preseason, and I mean the area was a ghost town, and the mountain had just one long blue run open. That was like the entire place. But then we had that storm that hit us down here really bad. But it didn't hit that far up. So by the time we made it all the way north into Wildcat, like 6 hours up into New Hampshire, there still wasn't that much snow. They still had like one long run open. And originally we had planned to stay at Wildcat and go to Attitash, which is like near it. But we wound up rebooking our passes further south to mountains that were like 2-3 hours south because they had more snow than the northern mountain did. So when we got down to Mount Sunapee and Crotchet Mountain, like they had their whole mountain open, for most of it at least. But the more northern places weren't really worth going to because they didn't have anything open.
Wow.
Which is unusual.
It is because Beach Mountain down in North Carolina has probably more snow than a couple of those places you mentioned. Seen some clips coming out of there, and they got a pretty good base for down there. It's quite unusual. It would be awesome if Jay's Peak was on that pass he has because Jay's Peak is absolutely amazing.
That's like the third time we've talked about Jay's Peak on
Oh my
this
God, dude.
podcast in the past couple of weeks, man.
Their blade runs are out of the world, and they get so much snow. It just dumps up there.
Oh man. So that I was apprehensive to buy a pass this year for many reasons, right? But I think snow quality being one of the major ones, right? I didn't see it being a great year, and honestly, so far I don't think it has been. I was looking at some pictures from Creek. I'm glad I didn't buy it. I still would have gone, but I think trips north. I think people are still kind of scared about that. I think it's good and bad. I was trying to see what was going to play out. Chris, you and I talked about it. What are they going to be doing with lifts? What are they going to be doing with the gondolas and everything like that? It's just kind of still, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation. But let's pivot for for the remainder here and get into the
I have one quick question for him though.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
how are the mountains working up there with COVID? Because I'm kind of the belief you're in the outdoors. I mean, skiing, you're not really hugging people.
Yeah. Well, as far as I know, when we're going online, we're booking through Epic. Of course, there's limited capacity. In the preseason, you had to book like the week of, and now with Epic Pass, you can book like as far out as you want, basically. But yeah, most of the resorts, like main parts of the lodge, are closed. Or if like the lodge has like a downstairs is the bathroom and the upstairs is the eatery, like it's blocked. Like you can only enter in certain ways, come out certain ways. But besides that, it's really just on the lift line. No one's really keeping you 6 feet apart because I mean, skis and boards are already that far apart. But if you're not wearing your mask when you're at the bottom and you're in the lift line, the places that are stricter, people are going to yell at you to put your masks on. But I really haven't seen a lot of people not complying with that. Everyone just is, and then when you get on your run, if you want to take your mask off, you just put it back on at the bottom. So I haven't seen anything really major. Just hand
Yeah, I was going to say
sanitizers
that
everywhere.
even nowadays, most guys who ski or snowboard
Yeah,
wear
you're covered.
masks.
Yeah.
Gaiters. But,
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, I was curious about that too. That was a good question, Joe. So let's pivot. So, when people think of New Jersey or the Northeast, they don't specifically think of rock climbing. They don't think of a lot of things. They don't think of beauty. They don't think of outdoors activities at large. But there is quite a large climbing community here in the tri-state area, right? New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and you have been involved in that for as long as I've known you, and before that. So kind of get into it a little bit for me, if you don't mind. How does one get into rock climbing in New Jersey, and what does that look like?
Okay, so the way that I got into rock climbing in New Jersey was you and your brother know that I used to play Ultimate Frisbee a lot. So I feel like rock climbing is one of those things that ex-Ultimate players wind up getting into, something on the other extreme end of sports. So I had a couple friends who were living behind me at the time in Cedar Grove. And I met up with them and they said, hey, we're going down to New Jersey Rock Gym in Fairfield. They said that there's a Groupon for it. They're like, do you want to come down and try rock climbing? And of course, I thought that sounded like a lot of fun, like a, adult jungle gym type deal. So I was like, I'm there. And then I went once, and from that day, I bought a monthly pass, and I've probably had a pass monthly somewhere to rock gym ever since at that point. So,
but you started in the gym, right? And then you moved on from there to do a little bit of outside bouldering, and then you went on to actual like climbing rock faces outside. But majority of your climbing is in the gym, right?
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, most people, they get to the gym, maybe they climb for like 6 months to a year, and then they meet up with a group of people there, and somebody says, hey, we're going outside, blah, blah, blah. And somebody says, I've never been out before. And then you get strung along, and then you learn how to climb outside, where I'm sure the case before gyms and probably some people in other areas, going outside is their first experience. But it's definitely a much softer and safer introduction to like go to the gym first and learn and then get thrown outside, I think.
yeah, I have buddies that have been climbing for a long time. And back in the day when they started, there was no real gyms like that, and they were just out there doing it. I mean, one guy I'm buddies with is really going insane. He's taken into ice climbing. They'll go out ice climbing, they'll frozen waterfalls and stuff. But they spend a lot of time. We got gyms down here, and those gyms just training and training. I'm sure it's a crazy workout too.
Yeah, there's a lot of like you're saying before about like most of the time being in the gym, especially during the winter and like weeknights when we don't have the sun. I mean, that's all we have really. So, we wind up just going climbing at the gym. In the summer when the hours are longer, we could try and get out on the weeknights if there's enough sun and we can go somewhere close. But yeah, most of the time we're in the gym just because that's what we have to do.
Do you have any plans in the future for taking like trips to go rock climbing, or have you taken any trips climbing? Or
the only trips that I've done climbing, I mean, we've only done by car. We've gone 5 hours south, 5 hours north. So, going as far down as like places like West Virginia or going up into Vermont or the Adirondacks. I know a lot of people that I climb with have, hopped on a plane and, either different countries or going out west. But we do have a lot of different climbing just here on the East Coast. So
Yeah.
hope in the future I will, but at this point, I don't know when, not with flying. So
Yeah. I mean, because like you said, the West Virginia, PA's got a lot. Yeah. And people always forget Jersey. I mean, they just think Jersey, they think major metropolitan areas, but there is a ton of nature in Jersey, as I always say.
there's a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I think, going into a gym or getting into a sport in general is always intimidating in so many ways, shapes, and forms, right? I can tell you that the Fairfield gym is incredibly open. The few times that I've been there, it's everyone that I've ever met there has been very welcoming and has always been pretty friendly with, getting you involved. So if anyone is trying to get into climbing, do not hesitate to go to a gym. They're not gonna bite, at least not unfriendly bites. Everybody's friendly. So when you first got out of the gym and you climbed outdoors, what did you look for? You said you went with some colleagues of yours. I know we did a little bit of bouldering not too far from you in, I think it was Cedar Grove, if I'm not mistaken, not Little Falls. But outside of like local immediate areas, did you go to the Shogunks? Did you go, any place out west here in Jersey?
Yeah, I think my first time outside was at a place that climbers call Power Lines, which is in like Suffern, New York, kind of like right when you pass from 287 into the Thruway. You can kind of see Mount Fuji, the Japanese restaurant up there from the area. Yeah, and that was from my first couple times at the gym, and somebody said, "Hey, we're going out, on Saturday," and as somebody at the gym who doesn't have any equipment, I don't have crash pads or I don't have anything for going outside, you just tag along with people because you don't have any of that yet. And that was a fun day. I definitely like the adrenaline or the aspect of like climbing something tall and getting up there. It did start to rain at the end of the day, and we continued to climb, which is a really bad idea. So I wouldn't recommend that. But it was definitely a interesting first experience outside.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to be climbing if it was raining. That is for sure.
So
Yeah,
I got a question. So, price wise, like getting into it, gear and is it pretty pricey? Is it something that's not too bad price wise? No.
I mean, like gyms in general aren't
I guess the climbing equipment you need too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So your equipment, I mean, it's expensive as you want to make it. I mean, you can probably grab a pair of, cheaper shoes for about like 60 to 80 bucks, and then you can grab a harness. But realistically, those things should last you a long time. If you're somebody who like really takes it seriously, I mean, people who have like very high end shoes that are like, I have some shoes that are like 160 bucks and you can burn through them in like half a year before they need work or resoling. But getting into it at the start is not super expensive. I think you could, pick up two things pretty cheap and use them for a while. But
yeah,
I think that's
always. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I said I think that's variable because like I chew through my shoes like it's nobody's job. But I know some people who have had the same shoes for like 2 years. So yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and you look at the old like 70s climbers, right? Maybe even late 60s, and they were doing it in jeans and like tank tops and like regular shoes. So
I do it in cutoff shorts and tank tops still.
So that's Brian. You never got into climbing, did you?
No, I think it's funny enough.
To come with us.
The listeners, don't know this yet, but I was a Boy Scout for years, and it was funny. They kind of introduced me to a lot of my outdoor activities, and climbing wasn't one of them that we ever kind of put past us. I know, Mike, you and Bob would do rock scrambles and talk about doing stuff like that, and some bouldering, and I think you even had climbing shoes in the closet when we shared a room when we were kids. But just something that I wouldn't say didn't interest me, or was more of a I didn't have it in front of me, like the other activities, surfing, fishing, snowboarding, where I was just kind of in it. As an adult, it's something I totally would love to do. You know, I've brought in groups of friends backpacking up in the Catskills, and I found different rock walls. I was like, whoa, this would be really fun climbing place. I don't know if they're mapped yet on your side, but it's definitely an interesting activity. And you actually brought up something that kind of caught my attention about the climbing gyms. Surfing is kind of going to deal with something similar I think climbing has right now with climbing gyms, where you're going to have groups of people who learn in a pool, and then they're going to kind of go outside and kind of experience it firsthand. So I'm curious what the kind of what the interaction is going to be similar.
Or like the learning curve, right?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a learning curve. What's the cost of, let's say, a month pass at a local climb gym, if you know off the top of your head, Chris?
Oh yeah, I mean, you're probably looking, if you're looking at a place like NJ Rock, you're probably looking in like the 60 to 70 range or something. And then there are gyms, we have gravity vaults that are all over the place. It's one that's in Hoboken. They'll be a little bit more expensive because they're a franchise, but they're not, they're more expensive than a regular gym for sure. But as far as like specialty stuff goes, it's not too bad. That's probably like an hour's worth of like tennis court time somewhere. So
yeah. Absolutely.
Unless you just find tennis courts and play, regardless of whether or not you're a member.
Yeah.
Well, that's not that possible nowadays with the whole pickleball craze going on. I don't know if it's hit up there, but dude,
don't even talk to me about pickleball.
Not that
man.
I play tennis, but if I did, there's no way. There'd be like gangs of angry senior citizens whacking me with paddles. It's nuts down here.
That's a story for another time, man.
Yep.
That's right. We were playing tennis locally at our local lake has one down here, and we show up and people show up with all their dogs. We used to do the same thing when Toby was alive, my Doberman. We would bring him to tennis courts and let him run around. As people like show up and they're like looking, they're like, oh, we usually let our dogs run in there now. It's like, well, it's a tennis court, man. Like, sorry, I'm playing. If you beat me here, I would have let you continue to run, but oh well. And don't even get me started with those pickleball people, man. Brian and I could tell you stories about that offline, and Chris knows the guy as well.
Oh man,
yeah.
I know multiple.
You know multiple now?
Yeah, it's out of control.
Oh, you're gonna join. You're gonna join. You have a custom-made paddle you shaped.
He looks like he's a pickleballer, right? Yeah.
No, it's just a little bit.
I got my white polo ready to go. Back to the climbing. I actually, what intrigues me too is that it's a low-cost outdoor activity.
Especially bouldering.
Yeah, people can get into this and safely. Well, I wouldn't say safely, but if they have good direction, could get into this and do it pretty cheap.
Yeah, I'll say, like you just said, bouldering is definitely on the end of the cheaper part of the activity, because you may buy a crash pad, once, and then that's it. But if you're into like they call it like trad climbing, where you're going up and a crack is like this big, and you've got that gear that fits in this crack, but maybe you need like 12 of them or something. People have these like their garage are just filled with racks and racks and racks of different kinds of protection. So you could get crazy with it. But yeah, I would say bouldering is a good, pretty low cost sport. I think the most important, the most expensive thing is that people are just constantly buying new shoes or resoling their shoes. But bouldering is definitely a more low cost sport than the rest of it.
Yeah, and that's always what we did. I started with climbing in high school. Mr. Fowler, right? He got us involved in, it was a DARE program where we had a climbing wall in our gym at the high school before we had this whole kind of like outdoor gymnasium thing where they had rope swings and all sorts of craziness. But we had a rock gym, and they would bring in these sixth graders, and we would run a climbing day for these kids. And, we took them through the whole motions, right? We had this great kid who was on my one of my squads. This kid Paul, he was a fantastic climber, speed climber. He could make it up the wall in like literally 3 bounds, and he was tiny. This kid was like 5'2". It was the most amazing thing in the world. And here I am, I was a lanky, teenager. It would take me double the time, 3 times the time. But that was my first kind of entryway into that. And there's Ranger. And it kind of evolved after that, because we didn't have access to gyms back then. I think, around 2000, there were no real gyms. At least you didn't know of them. So we found outdoor places, and actually the one place we always went to, Bob and I, was the place that you and I went to down in Cedar Grove. you're talking kind of the beginning of Google back then, and we found, through some forum that there were these, boulders that you can climb, and we went there quite frequently,
So
and always loved doing it.
it's funny you say that. I like once again back to college. I was out there in 2002, and all the towns, like in all their YMCA type deals, they all had these giant, rock climbing walls and all that stuff. And I thought it was crazy, but it's funny. Now the schools by me are installing them in their school. There's one North Hartford High
wow.
School that's had it in there now for about 4 or 5 years. It's definitely becoming a really popular sport.
Well, I think it builds character, right? And I think especially for younger kids, it's allowing people to, kind of feel comfortable with themselves, know that they can get over their fear of heights, know that, if you're strapped into something, that even if you fall, your teammates are going to make sure you don't get injured, or at least don't get hurt badly, right? Now, bouldering's a different story, and outdoor rock climbing's a different story. I mean, have you been injured doing this, Chris?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think bouldering and rope climbing outside comes with an inherent risk either way. There's been times I've injured myself just hopping off of something that was 4 feet from the floor, and you didn't know that there was a rock jutting out from under your crash pad. So, I mean, it could happen from something really severe, or it could be from something really silly that you're doing too. If you're bouldering anything from like 0 to 10 feet, you're probably relatively safe. But I mean, people take bouldering to, they would call it highballing, which is like kind of when you're pushing like that 20-30 foot range. And people go into this like a no fall zone, basically, where like if you fell, you might not die, but something like really, you're going to mess yourself up pretty bad. And in general with rope climbing, I mean, if you're top roping outside where the rope is already above you and you're just kind of hanging from it, you're, relatively low risk. But in the scenario where you're lead climbing and, there's that counterbalance between you and your belayer, you could fall and still fall like 20-30 feet on the rope still. So, there is a lot of consideration for going outside, but, there's a lot of techniques and things that you can do to make it a lot safer.
And then you look at people like Alex Honnold, right? Or if I'm destroying his name, right? Free soloing El Cap, like, that's something that people traditionally don't do
Yeah.
that. That's a whole nother area that's just insane. What are your thoughts on something like that? Would you ever do anything like that at that height?
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's it really depends on what it is. Like, people watch that movie and then they're like, you guys rock climb, and I'm like, that's not what we do. And even what he does is very different from like what other very big wall climbers are doing. Like, he doesn't usually do that kind of stuff. Like, on a regular climbing day, like, he's climbing with ropes, doing things that are probably harder than what he's doing. But he says he's like a gymnast and doing like a perfect routine, but he's done that. The thing that you see him do, he's done it on ropes like hundreds and hundreds of times. So he knows the exact thing, but that's like such a minute like piece of like, I guess, the climbing world, or even people that do that kind of thing, because some of them are dead already.
It takes some sort of, I want to say this respectfully, like there's something wrong with you. Like, in my opinion, it's like people who do extremely big wave surfing, like you're pushing the limits of what it is that humanity should do. And I mean, I applaud him for doing what he did with El Cap and what he continues to do. Joe, I see your video upside down there with the dogs. But like, I don't get it. That's like a whole nother level of stuff. And I see Brian shaking his head. You agree, right, Brian? Although you want a big wave surf, so I don't. You're on mute, so.
But go ahead.
Oh, Brian?
Yeah,
Brian, you there, buddy?
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
There he is.
So, like the big wave surfing, there's a whole nother level of crazy you have to have in you to be able to just turn it off in your head. Be like, okay, here we are. This is what we're doing. I don't know if there's.
But that's big wave,
Yeah, that's
rock climbing, massive mountain, like anything
mean-
that's to an extreme. That's I don't know.
big wave surfing can kill you like that. I mean, if you're not training and and you're out there in 20, 30-foot surf and you eat it and then you're just getting pounded by the set. I mean, Mark Fu. I mean, Mark Fu was an incredible surfer, and unfortunately, what happened with Mark at Mavericks is
Tragic. Yeah.
I think that the big wave is worse because like say you pick a route that you're going to climb, you could do it on a rope 100 times. You could rehearse the movement, you can train and get ready for it. But the variability of that one time that you go up and down has so much less variability than one giant wave that you don't know exactly how it's going to run out. So I think they're like very, very different things. I think the wave is way scarier.
Good point.
Yeah, well, the wave's moving, right?
I don't like heights, even though I snowboarded up at 13,000 feet. That doesn't bother me, but climbing, I don't know.
Yeah. My hands are getting.
But a lot of those snowboarders, they when they're going out in the backcountry, they have that knowledge and know how to climb.
Yeah.
Skiers too.
That interests me.
Oh, like hiking backcountry?
Yeah, I think about that a lot actually.
It is so fun, but if you're not ready for that altitude, oh my God, man!
I know.
Let me tell you, it hits you hard.
There's a few spots here on the East Coast that I've done a lot of research, and maybe next season when we get a couple of good dumpings, because it's been a couple of years since we had a heavy snow year, so it's got to be a heavy snow year to do it here on the East Coast.
Yeah, I've hiked what's it called up in Vermont, that real huge peak that they have up there. I always forget the name of it. But still, I think that the top of that peak, I think, is like 7,000, 8,000. And when you're out in the Midwest or even in California, and you're starting at 9,000, 8,000 feet elevation and going to 12, 13. It wears you out. You wouldn't believe.
We climbed Ajax in Telluride.
Yeah,
and that
was,
what, 14, and we started at, I think it was 9, and that was. But I love it. I'm not afraid of heights. I mean, I don't like jumping from them. I'm good if my feet are on terra firme, but like, I think both Chris and Brian know that from our time trying to, cliff jump. But, I'm not afraid.
I would jump cliffs all day long, but
no.
Something about being on a face and just like hanging is like.
Yeah. I'm cool with it. Brian, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, the next progression, Chris, sounds like once you snowboard at the end of the season is to start thinking about routes you could climb and then snowboard down.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess the next thing to learn is ice climbing, but honestly, that is way scarier to me than almost all of regular climbing. Just kind of like for the same reasons, or the wave or like big mountain riding. It's like, hey, avalanche, like boom. On a regular rock, it's like if you climbed it a bunch of times, you kind of know what you're dealing with. But then ice climbing, it's like, who knows when all that stuff is just going to fall off the minute that you hit it. So
my buddy, there was a spot in West Virginia they would go to, and there's some waterfalls that freeze over, and they're not that bad. Like the height wise, I don't know, maybe 100, 200 feet. They didn't look too hard to me, but they were like, when he went there, I mean, it was just so frozen solid. It was nuts. But.
Only Joe? Only 100, 200 feet? That's
dude. It's hard to. It looked different than like climbing sheer rock walls because it was like in the forest and like it might not even been 100 feet. It might have been like 50 feet.
Don't get me wrong. It looks awesome.
The walls in the place look bigger to me. Yeah,
I agree with Chris. There's too many variables that would just not. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're hiking the Alps and climbing during the winter, or in the Midwest, avalanches scare the crap out of me.
Oh my goodness, yeah. That's one of the weirdest things in the world. It's the beginning of the day when you're out west and you hear the dynamite going off up top because they're triggering all the drops and the.
You would be surprised how many people don't pay attention to that.
It's loud.
And duck ropes out west, and that's not something. Over here on the East Coast, you duck a rope. You're not taking your life in the hands, but out there, if you go up to these fields and the higher reaches and you're ducking ropes, slides happen at resorts, and they do happen yearly sometimes.
Yeah, not for me. That and doing tree runs and Sunny Bonoing. Yeah, I see you smiling at
So
Brian.
this is back to the tree runs. So the real tree runs out there aren't as bad as you think. Like if you're actually like hitting a glade run, like, you know, the nice aspen trees or firs, you just got to take your time. You can't Sunny Bono through them. Like,
Yeah.
No,
you
it's
know,
all about the burden.
yeah.
But remember that day we had a POW day last year at Creek, and I remember being on the lift. And I'm selling this guy out, but it was one of the ski patrolmen, and he jumped on the lift with me, Mike, and he said, I forget how much snow we got, but it was over a foot. He said, if you're gonna duck the rope, today's the day. And I remember laughing about it with you. And I was like, all right, well, we were gonna anyway, but still fun.
There's serious consequences in the Midwest to be, or
Yeah.
California, like in Tahoe, doing stupid things on the mountain. For example, here I was out there at Keystone, a guy from Maryland, I think he was like 22 at the time. He was riding Keystone, and somehow he was just ducking ropes and going in the back. And they had this like one hut there, shed, where they kept water to spray snow. And he was skiing, hit this shed, went into the shed and drowned in the water.
Oh,
Wow.
Because I mean, stuff like that happens all the time. Then there was two guys, I think they were from Jersey actually, who came out to hike the Quandary, which is the 14,000-foot mountain Breck, and it's like a face like this. So they say it's the easiest. It almost looks like a pyramid. And they went out like the day after a snowstorm, and guess what happened? It slid. The one guy was trapped up to his boobies, and the other guy to hike down and get him. The guy was out there trapped for, I think it was like a day. He survived, but he lost a
Wow.
foot because of frostbite. I mean, people go out there and do this stuff all the time. It's insane.
Well, it goes back to what we were saying. You got to respect nature, and you need to know your limits, right? Like you don't go in and especially, tourists, right? We talked about a little bit about Havasu and, having to rescue people on, hiking trails and stuff like that. People getting into things that they shouldn't be doing. Like know your limits, know nature, pay attention to what's going on around you, and have a little spatial awareness, and you should be okay. Use your common sense and you should be okay. Of course, accidents happen, freak accidents happen, but don't duck ropes, man. Don't go pay attention. If you hear something that sounds like dynamite, just pop your head up real quick and take a look.
Don't you remember me telling you that when I was there, like everybody kept telling me before the mountain opened that, dude, somebody's going to fall off the lift in the first day. And I thought they were messing with me. And dude, within the first hour, somebody fell off. Like, how does that happen? Like,
So
you're out there messing around.
Someone
It happens all the time. All the time.
It was here on the East Coast. It was in New York.
What'd you say, Brian?
Somebody fell off the lift this past weekend here in New York.
Really?
I'm not gonna burn who it was, but last season when we went, someone that we know almost fell off the lift because she wasn't paying attention. Yes, so it can happen. I mean, just always please be careful out there, regardless of what it is you're trying to do. Yeah, and I think we're coming up on the end here. We've been going for about 40 minutes. Yeah, Chris, always a pleasure having you on, man. Always talking to you in general, rather. I'd love to have you come back maybe in a couple weeks to hear a little bit more about your snowboarding. Maybe by then Brian and I will get out there.
Yeah.
Keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how. I wanted to ask. I forgot. The New Hampshire mountain. How were they? Snow condition. They weren't good. You said, right?
Yeah, up at Wildcat, like I said, like only one trail was open from top to bottom, and there was spraying snow on the whole thing while we were there. So that was
No fun.
it was pretty narrow too. But when we got down to Sunapee and Crotchet Mountain, it was all man-made, but they had a lot of the mountain open at least. But it's not what you'd expect for going that far north.
It will get there, I think, this season.
Yeah.
It's just a late start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that rainstorm we had, I think, just killed everything.
Yeah, the people up there said it wiped everything out.
Yeah.
Another thing I heard from a guy up at where were we? I think we were at Crotchet Mountain. Is he was saying that when the Vail Resorts took over a bunch of those places, that they cut back on the snowmaking. The guy was saying that budgetarily, if they weren't getting enough reservations, that they would cut back on the amount of snow they were making due to the budget. So that could also have something to do with the amount of snow that they did not have there.
I was wondering what was going to happen there because I remember in Vail bought all those, and out in the Midwest, they don't blow a lot of snow. very little.
I feel like a lot of places I've been to in the past couple of years, they haven't been blowing a lot of snow. I mean, even at Creek, Brian and I had been up there a couple times last year, and it was like, but I thought it was prime days to be blowing. I mean, it wasn't hot,
Well,
and you were like, you should be blowing constantly and get a
So-
nice layer. Nothing.
I can tell you this, with the old machines, the snow crew who used to run the mountains by us used to say, no, this was with the older machines, that they needed 24 or 48 hours of below 32-degree temperature to really make it work. If they weren't going to get that, they weren't going to do that. They're newer snow guns now that they can output a ton more and avoid that. But I don't think some of these places have necessarily upgraded their guns. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Chris, thank you, man, for
Yes,
joining
great.
us. And hopefully you enjoyed yourself a little bit. Next time, we should all join with whiskeys or something and, fireside chat a little bit about outdoor activities. And I think Brian's smirking a little bit about that. He likes that idea.
Yeah, I can definitely put on a nice pair of chaps and sip my cocoa.
Yeah.
But thanks for joining, dude.
No, yeah. Maybe we'll get you guys the climbing before the next meeting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a peg leg, so
Oh yeah.
can't do it. I wish I could. It's
Uh,
all right,
I'm-
dude.
Yeah, I'm down though. I'm down. Maybe we'll have to record it. And then also before we let everyone go, hopefully in the next few weeks we'll, have a little George Washington mission, and we'll hopefully record that a little bit as well. That's a little
might-
teaser.
Might be crossing the Delaware in one shape or form or another.
So we'll see. And Brian, you'll be notified of that activity as well. All right. Well, guys, thank you all. Have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. See you.
So yeah.
Later, boys.
All right, so that was the Hacker Outdoors podcast with Brian Hacker, Joy McCormick, and our guest, Chris Barbieri. If you like what you heard, please give us a rating on whatever platform you're listening to or watching this on. Please check the show notes for some links about the topics we discussed today. And as always, we thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.